This is A Course in Miracles. Please take notes. Today I'm going to talk about the introduction to A Course in Miracles. This is part of a series that I've been doing called Golden Moments in A Course in Miracles. This really should be the first video in the series, but it's like the 19th or 20th, I think. But I actually made a playlist on YouTube, so you can check out all of the golden moments that I've done so far. And they're all in order, but I will probably put this one retroactively the first. And I'm going to do, I've talked about the introduction several times at least on my channel, but I'm going to do a little bit of a different one today, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to be reading just a little bit from Absence from Felicity, which is Dr. Kenneth Wapnick's book about Helen and her scribing of A Course in Miracles and her life. It's really a biography of Helen Schuckman by Ken Wapnick. So let's read what Ken says about the introduction. He doesn't talk that much about it, but here's what he says. The actual dictation of the Course began with the words, "This is A Course in Miracles, please take notes." Let's just talk about that for a moment before I go on. Notes. Helen was taking notes, shorthand notes, very quick. It was like a very rapid dictation that she was receiving. So she was taking shorthand notes like a secretary, which then she would read to Bill, and he would type it. Bill Thetford, he would type it. Sometimes, though, Helen typed. And that's there's a little bit of a mystery. Like, when did Helen type? Did she always take shorthand notes, or were there some times where she just typed things without taking shorthand notes? Which is why it's difficult just to try to reconstruct the Course from her notes. And I think that's might be a mistake to think that you can reconstruct A Course in Miracles just from Helen's notes. I think there's a mystery there that only she knew. Right? Maybe she didn't remember everything either. but now we don't, who's to say? So this is what Ken says. He says, "This is A Course in Miracles, please take notes." That's how it started. It went on with the first of the miracle principles. So there was no introduction at first. It was the first miracle principle was the first thing that Jesus told Helen after "This is A Course in Miracles, please take notes." The published introduction, incidentally, except for the two sentences that come shortly, was added somewhere between Bill's original typing and Helen's first retyping. In that version, the introduction actually came in two parts, though in Helen's second retyping, they were combined as they are now. So this is where, I don't know if you got all that, but this is where Helen, when she retyped things, she might have edited as she was typing. Helen later told me that she had complained to Jesus that the text needed a better introduction than "This is A Course in Miracles." So Helen said to Jesus, that's not a good enough introduction. The Course has to have a better introduction than "This is A Course in Miracles." And so Jesus obliged, although the notes for this are not extant, meaning they no longer exist. It's a funny story. It's funny to think that Helen could tell Jesus what to do, and that Jesus did not think that himself, like, we have to have a really good introduction for my Course. Why didn't Jesus think that? Why did Helen have to tell Jesus that? It's just a question. I mean, it's one to leave open and talk about more, but not now. And so Jesus obliged, although the notes for this are not extant. It is quite possible that Helen simply typed the current introduction without first taking it down in shorthand. Right? So she might not have even taken it down in her notebook, but she might have typed it. One final comment before beginning, whenever Helen thought a word or phrase was emphasized in her mind, she underlined it. Not all of these words were kept, however. Those that were, of course, appear in italics. So whenever you see italics in the course, it was probably because Helen had underlined that word as important. And then it got put in italics later, because most books don't have things underlined, right? They have things in italics. All right. But you'll notice, I'm reading from the blue 3rd edition put out by the Foundation for Inner Peace, that the entire introduction is in italics, which is interesting. And it doesn't say, this is a Course in Miracles, please take notes. It says, this is a Course in Miracles. Then it says, it is a required course. Only the time you take it is voluntary. Free will does not mean that you can establish the curriculum. It means only that you can elect what you want to take at a given time. The course does not aim at teaching the meaning of love, for that is beyond what can be taught. It does aim, however, at removing the blocks to the awareness of love's presence, which is your natural inheritance. The opposite of love is fear, but what is all-encompassing can have no opposite. That's paragraph 1. Paragraph 2. This course can therefore be summed up very simply in this way. Nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. That's the introduction, right? As we have it now. This was not the original introduction, as Ken just said in the book. This is not the original introduction. Helen had to ask Jesus to make a better introduction, which he did. And it's a great introduction. That's why we're saying this is a golden moment in A Course in Miracles. And in fact, if you really understand this introduction, you don't need the rest of the course. This is the whole course right here. The entire course is right here in the introduction. So let's read it and we'll talk about it, and then we won't need the course anymore. No, I'm just kidding. But all right, I'm not kidding. I am, but I'm not. Paragraph 1. This is A Course in Miracles. And the name, the title, A Course in Miracles, is funny in a way. I think Helen and Bill also thought it was a funny name. Why would you need a course in miracles? Right? That's one thing. This is A Course in Miracles. It is a required course. Now, I could also read this part in Ken's biography of Helen, where he talks about this whole thing about being a required course. This was a joke. That Jesus was kind of ribbing Helen, because Helen was like, I don't want to do this. Do I have to do this? And Jesus was saying, yeah, this is a required course. This is not an elective. Like when you go to college, right? There's required courses and there are electives, things that you can take but you don't have to. There's a drop ad period, if you remember when you were in college. There's drop ad. But this is a required course. You have to take this course. Now the question is, do you have to take A Course in Miracles? I think Jesus was saying to Helen, you, Helen, have to take this course, right? You have to do this, because this is your duty. This is your job. This is what what your life is about. This is the great work of your life. And I think Helen came to understand, even though she was resistant to A Course in Miracles, she came to understand that the course was really her life's work. And really, it's all of our life's work, But I think we have to think even broader than the course, right? Is A Course in Miracles a required course, or is the Return to Love a required course? And keep in mind that the word course has different meanings, right? Course, like the course that you might take, not like a course in college, but the course of action or the course of living or the course of the river flowing, the river coursing, right? So all rivers must return to the sea, and the sea refuses no rivers. So it is a required course. The sea of love, right? We're all going back to the sea of love, and that is required. But you don't have to do a Course in Miracles, per se, right? This is a Course in Miracles. It is a required course. Only the time you take it is voluntary. Why is it voluntary? Because of fear, right? Because we might not be ready to go there yet. And so we might want to take our time, right? But we could do it more quickly if we were more willing to get out of our comfort zone. If we're more willing to go through the fear, then we could do this more quickly. But we can take our time, right? In the end, we'll know there is no time anyway. So that was all an illusion. But I think bottom line with Jesus is the only time is now, and the only time to do this is now, and you don't have to postpone joy. But I understand that you will, because you're resistant, because you have fear. So Jesus is not forcing anyone to do anything. Even Helen, he never forced Helen to do this. He only just showed up in her mind, and she had a choice. But she chose that she was going to do this. She was going to cooperate. She was going to go along with the program, and she did. Only the time you take it is voluntary. Free will does not mean that you can establish the curriculum, right? You didn't. Now this gets to the authority problem of the Course. God created us, but we did not create God. God made the return home, right? God really doesn't do anything, but it's helpful for us to think in these terms that God made the curriculum. We didn't make this curriculum. The return to love is a given, right? The return to love is not even a thing in reality, because we never left, so there is no return. So that, I think this is also what Jesus is getting at here, that the atonement principle is God has never changed. God is love, and love, that eternal love, has never changed. We never left God in reality. We think that we did. We believe that we did. But that is not true. Therefore, the return to love is a given. It's already a given, right? It's not even a given. It just is, right? Love just is, and we are still there. We just have forgotten. So we need a course. We need something to help us to return, because we've gotten so lost in the illusion that we think that the illusion is reality. So free will does not mean that you can establish the curriculum. It means only that you can elect what you want to take at a given time. Right? It means you can elect, the elective of the Course is you can elect, due to your fear, how much you want to take at any given time, how much you can take. The Course does not aim at teaching the meaning of love, for that is beyond what can be taught. So then it shifts to the Course does not aim at teaching the meaning of love, for that is beyond what can be taught. Now it's interesting that it goes right into love, talking about love, right? From the very beginning, the introduction. It does not talk about God. It does not say God here. The Course, nothing can teach you what love is, because love is what you are. Love is an experience, cannot be taught, cannot be explained, cannot be described. Jesus says this throughout the Course. There's a famous passage that the journey to God is merely the reawakening of the knowledge of where you are now and what you are forever, something like that. Truth cannot be explained and it cannot be described, something like that, right? So Jesus cannot teach us love, what love is, cannot teach us the meaning of love. He can only help us to remove what is in the way. So he says, it does aim, however, at removing the blocks to the awareness of love's presence, which is your natural inheritance. Right? That's a beautiful line, but let's go even deeper and say, it's not just our natural inheritance, it's not just our birthright, it is what we are, right? We are love. We are, let's just say love for now, right? But we're going to get into God in a moment. We are love. And we have to, in order to realize that, in order to know that, we have to remove whatever is in the way so that love can come shining through again. The Course does not aim at teaching us what love is. Love is what we will find when we have removed everything else that is in the way, right? So it does aim, the Course does aim, however, at removing the blocks to the awareness of love's presence, which is your natural inheritance. The opposite of love is fear in this world, right? In this world, the opposite of love is fear. And that's good, that's important to know, right? Because this is really what this paragraph is saying, is that why would you want to take your time with this Course? And why is Helen so resistant? Why was she so resistant? And why are we all so resistant? Because of fear, right? Fear is what is in the way. Fear is why we want to take our time, because we're not ready, because we're too afraid. The opposite of love is fear, but what is all-encompassing can have no opposite. So love, with a capital L, can have no opposite. There is no fear in reality. There is no ego in reality. Jesus does not say that here. He does not say anything about the ego. He only talks about love and fear, which is great in this first paragraph. Because love and fear are words that we all can relate to. God and ego, maybe not so much, but then he brings in God, right? Second paragraph, this Course can therefore be summed up very simply in this way: nothing real can be threatened, nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. Nothing real can be threatened, nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. What is real? Love. What is unreal? Fear. If there's only love, there's no fear, and love encompasses everything, that there's only love, then there's only peace. There's only the love and the peace, and you can call that God, right? But it doesn't matter if you call it God or you call it love. It's an interesting shift that Jesus makes from the first paragraph to the second paragraph, which is he's only talking about love and fear in the first paragraph, but then he shifts, second paragraph, herein lies the peace of God, and he brings peace in, right? The peace of God, the peace that comes from removing the obstacles to love's presence, and then you have love, and you also have peace. But the reality is first you have to have the peace, right? The peace of mind will bring you back to the love, right? Because when you experience peace of mind, you will start to see that it's really true, and then you will keep going. You'll see the fruits of your practice. You'll see that it really works, and then you will keep going until you get to the end, right, of the journey. And you will arrive back at the place you never left, which is what's called the love of God, right? Jesus does use that throughout the Course. He says the love of God. He doesn't, sometimes he just says love, sometimes he says God, and sometimes he says the love of God. So how do we get to the love of God? We get it through these two lines, crucial lines. Nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. Love is the only reality. Fear does not exist in reality. if it does not exist in reality, it does not exist even now, because now is heaven is here right now, reality is here right now, if you want to see it. So what we want to do, what this course really is all about, is a journey through our fear, journey through removing those blocks to the awareness of love's presence. That's all of our fears. We work through all of our fears. We work through all the clouds that are in the way of the sun, and we get back to the sun, and we see the sun, or we are the sun, right, shining in all its glory. And let me tell you one other little anecdote that I think Hen talks about in his book. It's a great story about, this is a little later in the scribing of the course, where Helen complained to Jesus, why is my life so hard? Why is this all so hard? Et cetera, et cetera. And Jesus said, most people on their journey home, they go up the mountain, right? They traverse the mountain, go up towards the peak. But you're not doing that, Helen. We're going through the mountain. We're going through the mountain. We're not going up to the peak, we're going through. There's a lot to say about that. It's a very interesting story. True story, right? But basically, I think what Jesus was saying to Helen is, we're going through your fear, right? We're going through all of your fear, all of your resistance. We're going to get to the other side. Right? I mean, why would you go to the peak of the mountain? Some people do go to the peak and then they come down, right? But you could also go up to the peak to get to the other side, right? And so I think that's what Jesus is saying. If you want to get to the other side of the mountain, you could go up the mountain, go down. That's the long way. But you could also go through. That's why people make tunnels, right? Through mountains. They make tunnels because you can go quicker if you go through the tunnel. Rather than going up and over, go through the tunnel. And I think that was the point of what Jesus was saying to Helen, is that you can go through. It's going to be more challenging, though, because you're going to have to really face your fears in a more concentrated way than you might otherwise. So I hope this is helpful. I'd love to hear your thoughts, your comments, anything you want to share. As always, appreciate you, and have a beautiful day. And I'm going to do another video here in a moment on the lesson that we got to today. I think it's 286. All right, shine on. Be the love that you are.